Lynk & Co is basically born out of the need to do something else in the car industry, or should I say mobility world. I think we're seeing a car industry that is more than 100 years old, still doing a little bit the same, is making cars better, but engineer them, design them, manufacture them in our big plants, and then ship them to dealers, and dealers sell and service them. And we thought there is a need for something else. The consumer today has got nothing to do with 10 years ago, let alone 100 years ago, and yet the industry is doing the same. So we said, instead of doing another car brand, which the world doesn't really need because there's so many and they're all good, is there a need for something else? And then we said, if you look at the consumer behavior, they're looking for something else, maybe not all of them, but enough of them. So there is clearly space for doing something differently rather than selling cars, but offer a lifestyle mobility. If you see how many people, how many youngsters have a driver's license today, it should really worry the car industry. You see the overall trend is moving away from ownership and going to experiences. Not only younger people, but in general the new generation of customers, they still want mobility and they love cars, but they will not spend £20,000 on buying a car today. When my son turned 18 and I asked him, what car would you like, Simon? He said, why would I want a car, but I'd like an iPad. That's 5-6 years ago, and he's not an exception. That's how the new consumers think today. They want mobility, but they don't necessarily want to buy a car or even lease a car. I like to compare it with Netflix or Spotify. We like to call ourselves the Netflix of or the Spotify of the car industries. You don't buy a car, you subscribe to mobility. We talk a language that is completely disaligned from our consumers. Our consumers, they want really great products and they want the best quality. They also want great brands, but they don't talk this automotive language, this engineering language. And I think we just need to adjust to our consumers and break out of this straitjacket of car engineers. So, that's what we try to do. So it's quite interesting. In our company, we don't have car freaks. I've been, of course, our engineers are, and they have to be, but the people who work on the business model, they need to be in the mindset of consumers. I've spent my career recruiting people in the car industry, and my first question has always been, what do you think about cars? And if they weren't wild enthusiasts, they wouldn't get a job. Now it's the opposite. A lot of our employees don't even have a car. And I think that's the mindset that we need to get in touch with, because these people are out there. And I'm not saying that the world is changing, that nobody's going to buy cars. But I think there's a very big group of consumers out there who want something else, and we want to tap into that. The way I see it is there's two things. There's the product and there's mobility. I think autonomous drive, electrification is the product, and I think that's going to change. And the product has evolved a lot over the last 100 years, even though I don't think that much. I think a mobile phone has evolved more in the last 5 years than cars in the last 50 years. But I think autonomous drive, electrification is going to come, and everybody will align. It's a bit like the airbags in the 80s. Everybody will have autonomous drive and will have batteries with a range of X hundred kilometers. But that, I think, is how the product evolves. I think the more interesting thing, I believe, is how you utilize the product and how people are mobile. And that's what I think we are going to focus on. The technology will come from within the group that we operate in, but I think what we believe is unique in the world today is not the change of technology really, but is the change of consumer behavior. I think designers become frustrated because you want to do a lot of things, but you can't because there's legal restrictions. On the other hand, I continue to be shocked of how the car concept is not evolving more than it is. I give a very simple example. I cannot believe, I'm not an engineer, but I cannot believe that in 2019, the only way to keep your windscreen safe from raindrops is two wash wipers going left, right, exactly like on the 4T in 1903. So there's so many things that we take for granted in a car because they've always been there. And I think the engineering and design world in the car industry needs to take a step backward and say, all of these things that we take for granted, what can we change on that? I think there's so much opportunity to make a car much more innovative and cool than it is today, even with the restrictions of what is legally done. So I think there's a lot of possibilities there. And I'm not saying all the others are wrong and we are right. I'm just saying there's probably enough people out there who want something else, and that's what we're trying to do. We looked at the last 100 years, new car brands, how have they started, how much volume did they do in the first year, and even though we don't see ourselves as a car brand, of course you compare, and then we thought, oh, this is quite motivating. It's the fastest growth within the first year of existence, so we're quite proud of that. We started 2 years ago in China with a very, very good success. We're very happy. That's why we're now very ambitious to start in Europe next year. We really look forward to that.